Well, tonight we're going to talk about how you can improve your product by problem solving. And the part I'm going to actually focus on is finding the real problem and how to address that. I'm currently a product manager at Badoo. I've been there for a year and a half. Before that, I was heading the product team at Charity Job. Been in the product sphere for about 7 years now. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn if you want to. I don't really tweet, so. If you don't know Badoo, Badoo is around 500 million users. That means 1 out of 19 person in the whole world is actually using one of our apps. So it's quite huge. It's very much in the social discovery sphere, and it's been around for, I think, 12 years now. So it's not exactly a new product. Our mission is to provide technology for people to meet, because happiness is better shared, right? I kind of want to get through where the challenges that I experienced when I joined Badoo. So the first few days, the first week, the first couple months even. And I think a lot of you might be able to relate to that, because when you join a new company, and especially a company that's been around for a bit of time, there's a few things you have to deal with. And the first one is legacy system. It's absolutely not easy to get your head around legacy system when you join a company like that. There is usually very little documentation, or documentation that is not up to date. Most of the time, you don't understand why are things done the way they were done. Why did people choose to do things this way or to build things a certain way? And when you try to change it without understanding it, that's kind of what happened. So I guess there's a way around that, but that's kind of one of the big challenges when you start. The second one is data. We live in a world where data is huge, is everywhere, and people love talking about big data and machine learning and pretty much everything. But the reality is data is a lot of numbers. Numbers are often not clean, not normalized, not easy to digest, not made in a visual way where you can just easily look at something and understand what to do with it. Very often data is too much, too many numbers, too many things to focus on, and you don't really know what to do with it. You don't know how to use it to actually make decisions, because you get lost within data. So where do you start? What happened then? What do you do when you're in this situation? So you're just joining this big company, and they have so much happening there, and what do you do as a product manager? Well, the first thing is take a step back, okay? We don't care about the data until you actually know what are you here to do. What is your company here to achieve? What is the people problem that you are trying to solve? In our case, well, we just said it, right? It's provide the best technology for people to meet, because happiness is better shared. People to meet. This is a keyword, right? We are here to make people meet each other. So every single decision we're going to make, every single way we're going to be looking at our product is going to be in order to achieve this goal and this goal only. The second thing is to define your key metrics. It's really nice. We have this big goal now, right? We want people to meet each other. We want them to meet offline, online. We want them to go on dates. Great. How do we actually do that? I can't say that, I'm going to launch a new feature tomorrow and then suddenly I can measure how many people I'm meeting offline. That's not a thing. So we need to be able to link this really big objective, this big vision, with something much more smaller, much more concrete that you can measure and that have a direct effect on your big goal. So in our case, we have an amazing data team. They did a lot of work, and we defined what we call our aha moments, which are matches and conversation. This means that we know exactly how many matches you need to have as a person to be able to meet someone. And we also know how long the conversation should be, how many conversations you should have, how many messages should be sent. All of that links your behavior to the likelihood of you meeting someone. So as a product manager, I know now that if I have every single one of my users having X amount of matches, I will have every single one of my users meeting someone offline, which is kind of a goal, right? We want people to meet. And this is something I can sort of control, but not really, because we work in a social network sphere, a user-generated content sphere. If you look at a funnel in e-commerce, for example, it's quite simple. People arrive on your site, they search for a product, then they buy the product, then they pay, and then they go. It's quite straightforward. We work in a sphere where you can have a very beautiful photo or no photo at all. You can have a very long description of yourself, no description at all. You can be very picky. You can like tall people, small people, blonde people. It's very, very user-focused, and it's not my job to say, okay, I'm going to choose somebody and you're going to like that person and this is going to happen. So we have to somehow remove every single obstacle that are between you and this match and this conversation. And this is what I'm calling the user funnel here. So we're drawing the user funnel. And it looks a bit like that. So you're a new person, you are looking to meet someone. You have first to find us, right? You have to find us. You have to go online or on the App Store and actually be able to find the app. That's our first key objective. You have to register. Registering does not mean you actually are going to meet someone offline. But not registering means you will not meet someone on our app, for sure, right? So it's kind of almost a reverse way of looking at it. Then you have to go through onboarding. That is mandatory. It's not for you to choose, but you have to upload some photo. You have to put some profile information, things that actually are going to make our job much easier to help you find this person that you're looking for. You have to like people. And finally, after like, you have to match with someone, so that person needs to like you back. And you need to start a conversation. So this is a very simplified funnel of what the reality actually looks like, but I think it gives quite a clear idea of how we can focus on specific point in the user journey, point that we can control, point that we are in charge of, to actually get you to this match and this conversation, which will then lead you to what we call our North Star, which leads you to meet people. For sake of simplicity, we're going to split that funnel into 3 main areas. The first one is going to be registration. So registration will be anything from you finding us to actually entering a phone number, an email, or your Facebook. The part called activation will be anything from when we verify that you say who you are, we verify your phone number, we verify your email address, maybe we photo verify you, make sure that you are who you say you are. Too fast. To the part that we call retention, and retention very much in this case is actually getting users match and this conversation, but retention is when you actually use the app. So when you actually have finished all this mandatory part and actually are using the app and really are creating the possibility for you to meet someone. So to summarize, the things that you want to look at when you first start is understand your North Star, define your key metric, and build your user funnel. That is sort of the framework that we'd be looking at when we try to solve a problem. And then, well, you have to find the problems, right? Like, that's kind of next step. The reality, though, is that most people do not define the real problem. They're going to ask the wrong question. And that is something that is very common and is very common everywhere. And it's human nature. We think we know the answer, but we don't. And we have to ask multiple questions to get to it. So one of the examples is something we've done, actually, when we define the wrong problem. We looked at our data, and we looked specifically at our registration method. We have multiple registration methods, and every single registration method have different activation rate and different retention rate. And we looked at it, and we saw that people that register with a phone number have a lower retention than people that register with an email address. So we just drew a hypothesis. People that use their phone number maybe are less committed to meet people than people that use their email address, right? So let's just remove phone number as a registration method. So that was a very cheap test to run. Obviously, you just hide something. We had a few variants. It ran for a few weeks. And obviously, well, it didn't work, right? We had a very, very big drop in registration, and we had a drop in retention as well, because we didn't ask the right question. The question was wrong. The problem is defined in a way that it's impossible for us to solve because it's the wrong problem. So if we look at it again, we say that registration stop here and activation start there. So yes, people that register with phone number have a lower retention, but they also have a lower activation. And this is where we should actually focus. So that is our new problem, which is people that are registering with a phone number have a lower activation rate than people that register with their email address. If you think about that, this is really far away from our North Star, right? We're quite far from, we're here to make people, to enable people to meet each other. We are at a very specific point in the user funnel, which is when you arrive on this one screen and you input your phone number and you click next, you are not going to activate your number and you're just going to drop off. That's quite different things, right? But somehow they link because of what we said earlier. Because if you actually activate your number, then you go through retention, then we can get you a match, and then you will meet someone. So, new hypothesis. Right. People put in a fake number. I'm assuming maybe that's what I would do. Go on an app, not too sure if I want to give you my real number straight away. I put in a fake number, see what's in there first, test the water, and then maybe come back and change this information. Well, that's easy for us to check, right? We have data, we know how many of our activation is going through and how many is not, and well, that is not the problem. People are not actually giving us a fake number, and people are giving us maybe not a real number, but an accurate number that can get verified. So if we call that number, the call goes through. If you send a text, the text goes through. So new hypothesis. This is like the third time we're asking the same question, right? We're still on the same problem, and we still haven't found what the problem is. So a new hypothesis is that maybe people do not know how to validate their number. Well, let's find out. Let's ask them. So what we did is we have a UX researcher in-house, and we just brought people in. We brought about 10 people that were not our users, but are using similar products. And we asked them, would you mind registering with your phone number, with your real phone number? And we let them go through the entire process, and we just observed them. And what happened is that when you put your phone number in, we miscall you. The app miscall you, and then ask you to take the 4 last digits of that miscall and put it into a form to validate your number. So we're sure it's a real number. But the majority of people were looking at this miscall and saying things like, it just hung up on me. It's not working. There's a bug. It doesn't say anything. They were trying to pick up the phone and saying, like, nothing is working here. We even had a guy that took his earplugs in and put in his phone, thinking maybe the sound on his phone was broken. And out of 10 users, 9 got stuck on this step and couldn't go further without us actually explaining them what to do. Didn't seem so complicated to us, but apparently it really is a complicated way of doing it. But if you remember, we started by talking about legacy system. And in this case, this phone call is a legacy system. There is a reason why we're calling people and not using another method. So this is not something we want to change right now at that time. So what we're doing instead is testing, explaining to people what we're expecting of them. So we're not changing anything fundamental in the app. We're not changing anything that might have other implication or might trigger other issues somewhere down the line. We are simply putting a little bit of explanation and a better way of, a better UI, a better UX, a better Lexem, trying to get you through this phone verification step. This is quite simple to do, and it's quite cheap to do. But it took us a very long time to understand what was the problem and why people couldn't actually go to the next step in the funnel. Well, that worked. Something as simple as that just worked. We had a significant increase in activation rate, and then phone number and email were about the same, and then we could carry through our funnel. Another thing that we see a lot is as product manager, we're the why person, right? We're the person that always, why are we doing this? Why do you want this? Why? But very often, people ask why once, and then whatever the answer is, we're quite satisfied with it, and then we move on. Well, that's kind of similar, because if you're only asking why once, most probably you're going to define the wrong problem again, and we're not actually going to get the real source of what's going on there. An example of that is, so at Badoo, obviously we have quite a lot of platforms. We have 4 platforms. We're in over 100 countries, different brands as well. So it's quite easy to compare the brand, the platform, and actually create something that we would consider is a normal retention, a normal activation rate. So we did that. We looked at our different brands on different platforms, and we compared everything. And we found out that the web retention was much lower than the other platform retention. And this was on Badoo only. So this is how we define a problem. New user on web are less retained than new user on other platform. Why, right? Why would you be less retained on web than on another platform? The app is the same, whatever platform you go on. It's the same people you're going to see. You're going to have the same conversation. And we just said that having a match and having a conversation is what matters, is what actually is going to allow you to meet people. So if you are having a match on your phone, maybe, and then a conversation on web, why would you be less retained on web? That's a bit funny. So that's the first why. Well, we found out that actually people on web have less conversation than people on the app. Why? Is the chat functionality on web less user-friendly? Is something not working, so the messages are slower to send? Maybe is it harder to find on web? Well, actually, no, it's just because you have less match on web. Why do you have less match? Because people on web like less other people, okay? Does that mean people that use a web platform are more picky, maybe, and they just don't like the same amount of people than if they were using the app? I don't know, but that's a new problem now. A new problem is that new users on web are less likely to like other people. And then we drilled down a bit more, and we found out that actually new users on web are less likely to like other people on the first day. So straight after registering, they're less likely to actually like anyone else than on any of our other platforms. Why? Well, let's look at the experience. This is what happened on the app. This is what happened on iOS. When you first arrive. So it's your first day, you finish your registration, you finish your onboarding, you put all your information, like your photo, you fill your profile, and you're about to use the app for the first time. This is what you see. The first step is this little black screen that says swipe right, swipe left. Then we explain to you that once you have a match, you can start a conversation with somebody. And then we show you this little, I don't know what's that called, but I explained to you how many matches you should actually get, how many likes you should actually place to get a match, and where are you on this line. This is the first experience on web. You arrive on web for the first time. You have finished your registration, same thing. You have finished your onboarding, so you've uploaded your picture, you've wrote a few things about yourself, and this is what you see. So you see Andrew in that case. You see a bunch of faces on the left, lots of things happening on the other side. It might be a bit confusing. That's just me thinking, that might be a bit confusing. So we draw a new hypothesis thinking maybe people do not know how to like other people on the web platform. They do not know how to click on this heart button. Well, obviously what we did is we asked our users. So we got people in again, and we asked them to use a different platform, and we looked at how they were behaving. And one of the very interesting things is that those faces on the side, people were trying to click at it, thinking that this is how you go to the next person. And we had questions such as, how do I browse more people? How do I find someone else? Or how do I save that person to come back later and then like them? People didn't understand that the way the app works is that you see one person at a time, and you have to make a choice right now. So we decided to build a solution, which is just explain to people how to like someone. Again, go back to our legacy system, right? People were trying to browse more than one person, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to let people suddenly browse multiple people because this is supported on multiple platforms, on multiple brands. It's quite a big work, right? It would be quite expensive, and we don't even know if that's a correct solution or not. So we went with something much simpler, which is just explain to people how to click the heart button, how to like someone. So we built what looks like a bit of an onboarding. It has a welcome. It just simply shows you here, click to go next, click not to like, and then we showed you how to choose your preferences. And well, it worked. As simple as that, it actually worked. Just explaining to people how to use the app actually worked. So if we go back a little bit, we had to ask how many why to get there, like 6, 7, I think, quite a few, right? And we had quite a few wrong hypotheses as well. We had to iterate a lot to finally get to like what maybe is the most simple solution was explain to your user what your product does, which we finally got to. And so we tested that as well. We tested other variants. This is a winning one. And then we decided to release that, and it's doing really well, actually. And now the amount of like placed on the first day on the web platform are within the same range as the amount of like placed on the first day on our other platform. So to summarize, I think I'm talking really fast. To summarize, this is what we went through. The first thing is how to get started, so how to understand your end goal, right? I'm not here to increase click-through rate. I'm not here to make money. I am here because we want people to meet. This is what we're doing. This is our end goal. Everything we're doing is made toward that direction. But we can't measure that, not like that. We need specific key metrics that we can actually action, that we know are related to our end goal. It's most probably causation, but it could also just be correlation. And to affect those metrics, those key metrics, you need a funnel. You need to understand what are the action that your user has to go through, what are the events your user has to go through to trigger those key metrics to then get your end goal. So we're kind of completely going backward, you know, from like the end goal and like then drilling down to the details. Once you have that, you know what to focus on. You know what are the key points in the user journey where you should focus on. What are the things you should fix if they don't work properly? Then you want to define the real problem. And to define the real problem, you have to validate with your user. I think very often as product manager, we underestimate how much we can learn from 10 people. We always go to big data. Actually, big data helps you figure out where the problem is. But talking to your user makes you understand what the problem is, what it is it that actually is making things drop at this specific point. And keep asking why. One why is not enough. One question is not enough. Very, very, very often, the problem is not what you thought. Actually, it's never what you thought. It's much more deeper, could be much smaller. You have to keep asking relentlessly. And then the solution part. So you draw a hypothesis. The hypothesis usually should be user-based. It should be linked to your problem. You have to test it. Please test everything. You cannot validate your hypothesis if you don't test it. You can't just say, I feel like this is working. That's not a fact. This is a stage where we actually do need the big data and test and iterate. We're not going to find the solution from the first time. Our job is to make mistake, to build the wrong thing almost, but understand why and actually carrying on until we find the real solution. And if you can do it in a way that, you know, it's a bit cheaper, in a way that doesn't cost as much in terms of engineering resources, then that's for the better. But don't let that stop you. And that's it for me. Thank you.